if we can simplify things, simplifying assembly, simplifying things in manufacturing and use, it really minimizes the risk, it minimizes damage, it minimizes rework. For example, the anti-rolls, like we spoke to before, the anti-roll tip protectors, that's all about flow optimization.
Rising above the buzz of ultrasonic cleaners and the clanking of stainless steel are the ideas and voices that are changing an industry. You're listening to the Beyond Clean podcast, the central nexus for the people, processes, and products that are improving our sterile processing world. Each week, we speak with frontline technicians, CEOs, engineers, and entrepreneurs with a common goal to help you fight dirty. Every instrument, every time. Whether you are tuning in for education or inspiration, we're glad you did. Now turn on those washers and turn up the volume. It's time to go beyond clean.
On this vendor spotlight, we will be speaking with Gabrielle Kelly, co-founder and CEO, as well as Kristi Schelhaas, co-founder and CCO at Raine Medical Incorporated. They are going to introduce their S.A.F.E.R approach, that's an acronym, and the opportunity to recycle in some areas like tip protectors and corner guards that maybe you didn't know that could be innovated in terms of design and making them eco-friendly. They're going to be telling us all about this today. There's a material difference between what you're used to and what Raine Medical is bringing forward, addressing real-world needs, not just theoretical challenges. We're going to hear about their anti-roll tip protectors so that you can get them applied faster with a lot less frustration. They've got some patented designs and all of that and more coming up next. Stay with us. We're going to have Gabrielle and Kristi with us after a short break.
From the studios at Healthcare HQ, you're listening to Beyond Clean, the global voice of sterile processing.
Joining me now is Gabrielle Kelly and Kristi Schelhaas, the co-founders of Raine Medical. We're going to be talking about protecting surgical instruments today, whether you're working in the sterile processing department or even as a manufacturer. And they've got a S.A.F.E.R approach. That's an acronym we're going to be learning about today. Gabrielle and Kristi, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having us.
Let's start with you, Gabrielle. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with your company yet anyway. They certainly are going to by the end of this podcast. And you have a very, very unique approach to the business that I think is going to resonate with our audience, not only sterile processing leaders, but also our supply chain leader audiences that are always looking for sustainability options in their sourcing initiatives. So maybe start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, and then Kristi, we'll have you go next.
Sure. So my background is in engineering and operations. I have about 20 years of experience now spanning the aerospace industry. In the last 10 years, I've had the pleasure of working in the med device space as well, just spanning products that are both sterile and non-sterile and up to class 1 and class 2 devices for both of those categories as well.
Boy, I'll tell you, aerospace, right? The tolerance is very similar to healthcare when it comes to manufacturing. Not a lot of room for error, is there?
No, very little, as it should be.
Well, I think our audience is going to love that because their level of attention to detail is also very, very high. Kristi, how about yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I've been in med device for 20 years, and I've primarily been on the commercial side of things. And in those 20 years, 2 decades, it's a long time. So I've done a lot of different things, a lot of different roles, international, US, marketing, helping with bringing a lot of different products to market, all within the perioperative space. And I love being in healthcare. I love working with clinicians, and I love the products.
Well, a lot's changed over 20 years. It's hard to believe. I think I got my nursing degree coming up on 30 years ago. That's really weird to say. I'm not too far away now. And, I could tell you a lot has changed, especially as, our audience in sterile processing here on Beyond Clean has grown. It's been a lot more attention to the sterile processing department. I'm sure you've seen the same thing. You said you love supporting perioperative departments, and that includes a whole lot of different departments within surgical services, but maybe just your own thoughts on how much sterile processing has taken center stage in so many ways versus maybe where it was when you first got started.
Yeah. So sterile processing is, as it should be, getting a lot of attention, becoming more center stage, I believe, with having to do so much. It's the heart of the hospital. We've heard that many times. And the attention to detail required, plus the increased complexity that's coming with all the new technology and the demands, efficiency, and doing it right. Sterile processing really is the heartbeat of the hospital.
It's just crazy because we've hit this difficult financial times. And so you hear do more with less, but I feel like sterile processing already had a lot less. And when you look at the technology investments, I don't know that you can go down. It's like we almost have to invest more and more at a time when we're clamoring for those budgets, and it's a little bit more difficult to attain.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Gabrielle, why don't you tell us about the company, like Raine Medical? What's kind of your mission? What's your vision? And maybe set the table at a high level for what you do.
Sure. We are a woman-owned small business, and we make recyclable protection products for surgical instruments and tools. When we started, we really took a step back and looked at what's currently on the market for sterile processing and found these gaps with tip protectors and corner guards. So this is when we asked ourselves, how can we make these different? That's when we reimagined them through this sustainability lens to create eco-friendly, durable, and effective solutions that do meet these needs of sterile processing. And it really ties back to our mission, which is to deliver safe and sustainable products that meet the evolving needs of healthcare. And our customers are loving the change. We're excited to keep sharing what we're doing, expanding our portfolio, and getting the word out.
Well, material composition is a big part of the conversation today, right? And, I think one of the things you told me is PVC-free, silicone-free, and recyclable. Can you kind of dive into what that means a little bit more in terms of, and maybe Kristi, this is a good one, for you to take, is terms of why does that matter? And I think a lot of times people are going to be like, oh, tip protectors, it just seems like maybe an afterthought for a lot of sourcing folks, and maybe even in the perioperative environment. But when it comes to sterile processing, those tip protectors are critical, especially I'm thinking about micro instruments and other, instruments that are easily damaged that all of a sudden can impact the performance that is happening in periop. But why is it so important to you all? And maybe talk a little bit more about it on PVC-free, silicone-free. I think, we kind of understand sustainable, recyclable, why that's important, but why is it important to be PVC-free and silicone-free?
Yeah, it's super important to us. As you said, tip protectors, they may seem like an afterthought, but they're used all the time. And when there's frustration with something small that's used all the time, it creates, compounding frustration. So the material difference, in addition to being recyclable, has a huge impact on the effectiveness and quality of our products. So because the product is made out of TPE, it does not get oily or sticky. It's very, very durable during steam sterilization. So the tip protectors don't shrink or stick to instruments. And all of those things optimize workflow when you eliminate those things. In addition, we've designed them to be very effective with increased ventilation. We have features like anti-roll, on the outside of our round tip protectors. Simple solutions that make a big difference.
Well, when you're using tip protectors, if they're going on the majority of the instruments, I mean, this is a repetitive thing that sterile processing technicians are doing over and over. So if they're not getting good grip or it is rolling, like what a pain that can be. Sometimes that might mean for many folks, like, I'm just not going to use these. And then that really does, subject the instruments to damage, going up into the OR. And especially like, I'm thinking like sharps. I used to work with a third-party repair company, and we always touted the benefits of tip protectors because, you could sharpen an instrument, but if it's not protected in transport and assembly, and then all of a sudden through sterilization and it gets set up in the case and you've damaged the cutting edge, you're going to have an experience from the surgeon. And I saw it all the time with micro instruments and like eye instruments. It could be a source of significant complaints when you're not protecting those tips.
For sure. And I think that is a huge part of it, is protecting the instruments. But in addition to that, really, it's protecting others from not getting harmed as well from these instruments, and also preserving the integrity of the sterile barrier, so that barrier system is not pierced as well during or after sterilization.
The other thing is, as you're talking through that, I mean, I realize that you have patented products with more patents coming. Is that because you're taking this sustainable approach, and is it, the manufacturing? I think you mentioned TPE, but I don't know that everybody knows what TPE is. Maybe you could just define that acronym too.
TPE is a thermoplastic elastomer. So it's a type of plastic that can be recycled. We use a specific material formulation that's biocompatible and was formulated to withstand the rigors of sterilization, including steam, ETO, and gamma. As far as our patents go, these are related to the design and functional utility aspects of our new and effective products. One example is our anti-roll tip protectors. These are a bit more special, as I like to say, because of that functional utility aspect, where they're designed to help prevent parts from rolling off flat surfaces.
Yeah, that's huge. The rolling definitely is going to be a way. Preventing that can save time, for sure. Let's talk about your S.A.F.E.R approach. So this is, I teased this as in the introduction, but it's an acronym. So maybe we could, first define the acronym, and then we can kind of talk about how you apply each of these, practices, in your manufacturing. So who wants to take this one? Gabrielle?
Yes, I'll start here. So these are really core pillars that Kristi and I used in order to kind of evaluate instrument protection products as a whole, and how we would go about designing them, manufacturing them, and releasing them into the market. The first one is S for sustainability. And that was huge to us. I think both personally and professionally, it's something that is woven into our processes, our design processes, our manufacturing processes, kind of how we go about looking at the products and how they can be used here. What was very important for us was to implement design for recycling and really kind of prioritize that as well with this eco-friendly material.
And, I think waste is such a huge issue in healthcare. I mean, it's just been very difficult to get our hands around. I think you shared with me, Healthcare Plastics Recycling Council says up to 25% of the healthcare waste is plastic packaging and products. And I mean, for those that are listening that have anything to do with logistics, whether they're unpackaging products, as part of their role in sterile processing or even on the supply chain, like you see this every single day, right? And so about 85%, again, according to the Healthcare Plastics Recycling Council, of that waste is non-infectious and could be recycled. So when we say non-infectious, it means it's not used in the patient procedure, correct?
That's correct. So kind of as we're aware, healthcare waste is real, and there are a lot of different opportunities as well in order to recycle. Of course, there are barriers to recycle. It's not an easy task to accomplish, right? There's multi-layered materials that would have to be easily separated in order to recycle. Kind of here in the US, we have somewhat limited infrastructure that is growing. However, it does impact the overall progress of recycling. And that's really kind of how we approached our products by enabling recycling is what really kind of where we said we want to be a part of that opportunity.
Yeah, and setting the stage for as we get better and better at recycling in healthcare, having that work done already on the front end is just so important, I think. Let's talk about the A in S.A.F.E.R, Kristi. Maybe you can tell us what that stands for and how you apply it to your business.
Sure. Well, A is for assessment, and this is all about assessing the market and understanding like the real needs and existing problems, those things I spoke to earlier, and, the oiling, the sticking, like understanding obstacles, and then working with departments from, within the hospital, from sterile processing to supply chain, also down to our partners for raw materials and things like that. And working to understand how we can develop a solution that addresses real world needs, not just theoretical issues.
That could be a pretty hot topic these days. It's like, okay, we have to get these raw materials from somewhere and incorporate them into our manufacturing, right? And so I think there's more and more, responsibility, emphasis, transparency. Like there's a lot of elements to this, but I don't think hospitals had this kind of awareness, from a degree of separation from who they buy their products from and what's going into them as they do today. I think in the past it was really blinded, but there's a lot of things that are going on since the beginning of the pandemic that have really, I think, required hospitals to be a lot more aware of where the products are coming from, where are the raw materials, not, who are the suppliers. I think, that element that you added at the end about how you're working with those suppliers to bring the right solution forward to healthcare is really a critical point that sometimes I think in the past has been understated, but I wanted to highlight that here because I think it's really important.
Yeah, we're very, very selective with what we do and what we put into every piece.
All right, Kristi, continuing on that, we're halfway through the acronym. Now we're on F. I'll go ahead and tell everybody what it stands for. Then you can tell us what it means. Flow optimization.
Yeah, flow optimization. I mean, it ties into the market assessment. Everyone wants smarter workflows, right? And so we're focusing on products to be efficient, to eliminate obstacles without sounding repetitive, but that's really what we're all about. And if we can simplify things, simplifying assembly, simplifying things in manufacturing and use, it really minimizes the risk, it minimizes damage, it minimizes rework. For example, the anti-rolls, like we spoke to before, the anti-roll tip protectors, that's all about flow optimization.
Yeah, I think these two that you just described go really hand in hand, assessment and flow optimization, because you really have to understand the struggles of the folks that are working in sterile processing to bring any kind of optimization forward. Any company that is bringing products to market, maybe with an innovative design, I know they have to listen to the customer really, really well to make sure that they are hitting the target there. Can you talk about how you engaged sterile processing as you were sort of, working on your design for these tip protectors to bring something, different and ultimately address their optimization and efficiency needs?
I think that's a really great question, actually. And I think it actually brings up the merging of Kristi and I, right? Kristi is representative of the commercial world, the customer voice. And historically, I've been more exposed to the engineering and operations, the OEM side of the world. And being able to kind of bridge that gap between the two is what I think brought those things together in terms of understanding what the real customer needs are here, that the parts get sticky and oily, and trying to figure out a sustainable solution, how we could do that differently as well. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle here, pieces of the puzzle. And then I'd say the design aspect is really something that, we looked at from the user perspective, having a lot of experience in manufacturing as well. I personally think it's very important to understand what the technician, in some cases as well, the operator, the mechanic is going through, to go out there and walk the line and see what problems they are having. And that's a piece in terms of this historical knowledge with sterile processing and tip protectors. I think a lot of people know that they do get oily and sticky. And I mean, if you have a part that's round on the outside, it could roll off of a flat surface, right? So these are, really real problems that Kristi was able to kind of bridge that gap with and bring the voice of the customer to the table. And we could troubleshoot together as well for all of these topics across the board.
Mm-hmm. I think
it sounds like the two of you are a great team.
Yeah, we are. I will say that we really are. Like I can say, oh, this is what's going on. And then sometimes there's this attitude of, well, that's just the way it is, where Gabrielle takes it and says, wait, what? No, what can we do differently? These problems that we've identified and then found solutions for in the past, I think have been, that's just the way it is. And that's just the way it has to be. And I think that happens a lot, especially when we're talking about, day-to-day things. So it's really important for us to, not take for granted the smaller things and look like really what can be done differently.
Yeah. I think sometimes when you might look at a product like tip protectors and it can be an afterthought, that complacency absolutely can set in, Kristi. It's like, oh, this is just the way it is. Maybe this can't be done better. And it really requires a team to come together and bring forward something and really improve in an area that is so often taken for granted. I mean, it really sounds like the two of you are a great team. I'm just curious. I know we're only halfway through the acronym, but how did the two of you meet each other?
We are former colleagues. So we have worked together in the past as part of a cross-functional team. And typically I don't think there's a significant amount of exposure from the OEM side where you kind of cross between commercial and a lot of the manufacturing, engineering, and so forth side of the house. And we had the distinct pleasure of being able to meet and work with each other.
Well, Gabrielle, before I took us on a little bit of a tangent there, you were talking about your background being in engineering, and that's actually the E in the S.A.F.E.R acronym. So why don't you expand on your experience and expertise in engineering and how I'm imagining this is getting to the real concrete side of what you do as a company.
This is a great topic. And I'm super excited about this. I think a lot of our detail-oriented listeners will too. At Raine, our goal has always been to design durable and effective products that help sterile processing and med device manufacturers protect their instruments, their tools, packaging, and sterile barrier systems. So for us, this all starts with a strong design, verification, and validation process. We always ask, as Kristi had mentioned earlier today, what are the real market needs and how do we design a product that truly meets this? So for our tip protectors, that approach really guided us. By bringing in clinical feedback from product evaluations, we were able to refine our material choices and introduce these new and more effective design features. It's a very iterative process where we're continually gathering feedback, we're reviewing designs and testing to make sure what we are delivering performs flawlessly. We'll continue this approach to expand our tip protectors, corner guards, and other various products that fall into these categories.
I think we spent a decent amount of time talking about, where you've made improvements for tip protectors, but you just mentioned corner guards and we didn't really dive into that. And I'm really actually significantly interested in where you saw some shortcomings in current designs for corner guards as well, because, that's another one where it's just sort of, taken for granted. There's maybe a couple of, ones that people are used to seeing over the various years. But one of the things that I used to run into a lot is it would, kind of damage the blue wrap, especially if the wrap was wrapped really tight. And sometimes, everybody's always inspecting blue wrap for holes afterwards, but I'm wondering, you probably went a lot further than that in your assessment. So I'd love to hear what you discovered.
So it really was a lot of interaction with Kristi and the historical knowledge of having voice of the customer as well. I think it literally started with me saying, well, Kristi, what are some of the problems that we're seeing out there? And one of them was moisture retainment as well. So when we discussed that through and I understood a bit more about that, we were able to then kind of bounce some ideas back and forth. And what we ended up landing on was developing a corner guard or different corner guard sized options as well that that all have this honeycomb cutout in the bottom that provides a place for moisture to drain during sterilization. And also it has that strength of that kind of honeycomb pattern as well. So it stays rigid. It doesn't slip as well. And when the technician is applying it or after as well.
What I really love about our corner protector design, Gabrielle mentioned the honeycomb. That's, when she came up with that, she referenced like bee honeycomb and how in nature that's one of the strongest shapes and it's incredibly durable. And our customers love that about them.
Yeah, I can imagine they also sort of allow for some flexion as well. Like it's durable, but it's also flexible enough that, it does prevent some of the damages when, I know there's, rules against stacking trays, but it happens a lot. And so, when that happens, I can imagine that having a corner guard with a little bit of flexion, is a little more forgiving than maybe just a solid piece of, plastic or PVC corner guard.
I highly enjoyed designing the corner guards with Kristi. It was something that we took this approach with designing after nature, which is often, the simplest design, the simplest process, and we were able to implement that into a product that has gotten or received some great feedback. So it's a small detail that makes an impact that we are proud and excited about.
Yes, but those small details in product design, in life, and day-to-day work really make a huge overall impact.
Well, that's the whole thing about disrupting a market that everybody has always said, this is just kind of the way it is. And you should be proud of that. That's sometimes this is the hardest area to innovate. And yet you found a way to innovate. There's something exciting about that. Let's talk about the part nobody loves, which is the R in S.A.F.E.R. And Gabrielle, this is regulatory readiness. So, everybody is, oh, great. We have the surveyors here. It's a great deal of anxiety that's experienced when they arrive. And, we kind of know the window when they're coming, but we don't necessarily know the exact day when they're coming. How do you contribute to regulatory readiness?
Yes. So this is last on our safer list of topics, but certainly not least. As far as regulatory readiness, this is something that we take an approach to ensure that compliance is in every market that we serve for our products. So this is actually something that we reviewed in detail right out of the gate as we were developing and designing our products. So we made sure we understood the different market requirements. So in the US, we have the FDA. In the EU, we have MDR. One thing that I think coming from the OEM side of the house, developing a rock solid QMS that's in compliance with ISO 13485 and looking at our risk assessment as well was very important to not just the development of our products and our processes, but how we internally are approaching that and making sure that we're tied closely in the loop with regulatory and also the quality side of the house as well.
ISO, International Standards Organization. I think this was something that maybe, again, sterile processing departments, perioperative leaders were not so turned on to maybe 10, 15 years ago, but there's been a great deal of awareness. I mean, ISO 13485 actually used to be sort of a sub category, and now it stands alone in for healthcare, which is also, I think, representative of the movement towards quality and standards and, manufacturing practices there as well. So it's great. And unfortunately for you, you're subject to all these audits yourself, just like sterile processing departments.
Yes. And we're ready.
So, Kristi, as we're kind of coming to the end, I'm going to give you the last question, and then we'll get some, general final thoughts from both of you. Maybe there's something we missed in the discussion today, but if there's one thing you wanted our listeners to remember about Raine Medical, what would it be?
Yeah, we want everyone to remember that we're redefining instrument and tool protection for sterile processing and also med device manufacturers. And we're doing this through safe and sustainable materials, through enhanced design and optimized workflow-driven solutions that really make an impact day to day.
Well, you are innovating in a space that maybe nobody thought could be innovated. And again, congratulations to the both of you. If anybody wants to learn more, you can check out their website, rainemedical.com. That's RAINE medical.com. You can also send them an email or connect on LinkedIn to request samples and test smarter protection, eco-friendly protection. It's recyclable. There's so many benefits here, and it is cost competitive, right, Gabrielle?
Yes, that's correct. We know budgets are always top of mind, so we've made sure our solutions deliver great value and competitive pricing.
So I just said they can email you to learn more or request some samples. So what's the email address?
If you can do info@rainemedical.com, you will get right through to us. And we would love to hear from you. We want to be in contact. We want to collaborate and communicate.
Excellent. Okay. Well, you two have been fabulous guests today, and you've got a great message. And I think, just continuing to focus more and more in healthcare on sustainable solutions. I mean, there are some big movements in this direction. I think it's great that you're innovating in this space with that in mind, because there's an eye towards the future and like literally the future of our planet. So a couple of final thoughts from each of you. Kristi, we'll start with you, and then Gabrielle, any final thoughts there? But Kristi, did we miss anything in this conversation that really needs to be highlighted?
One thing that we may want to add is part of maybe flow optimization. Our products are made in a different manufacturing process that does not create the punch outs that are often seen in other products. So sometimes people open a bag of tip protectors and there's little leave behind dots in there that can be very troublesome. Ours are manufactured in a way that does not create that.
Excellent. And Gabrielle, congratulations again to you as well. And any final thoughts before we wrap?
I would probably say two kind of final thoughts here, really. We kind of touched on it a little bit before as far as kind of that mindset shift, really, with things don't always have to be done the same way, particularly if you're running into barriers, obstacles. Things can be done differently. We need to kind of get into that mindset mode of kind of removing ourselves from that situation and ask ourselves, can we do it differently? Because we probably can. We most likely can. It's just a matter of figuring out what's the best way to do it.
All right, everybody. Gabrielle Kelly and Kristi Schelhaas, they are co-founders, but also disruptors from Raine Medical, joining us today on Beyond Clean and Power Supply. Thank you both so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Everybody, Gabrielle Kelly and Kristi Schelhaas. They are co-founders and disruptors from Raine Medical Incorporated. A great discussion today talking about their united and very clear mission around creating safe and sustainable products that are meeting the needs of the healthcare industry that just continues to evolve. Especially, I just want to continue to emphasize that eco-friendly approach. Obviously, corner protectors as well as tip protectors, just innovating in an area that I'm not sure we thought could be innovated. They are taking that safer approach, which we reviewed today, and they have some excellent experience in engineering, even in the aerospace industry. The tolerances are very slight in that industry, just the same as it is in healthcare. And I just think they've done a great job of incorporating materials that are safer and eco-friendly. They've got some real innovative designs in an area I'm not sure I thought could be innovated, and still working towards creating efficiencies and workflow-driven solutions. So make sure you check out their website, rainemedical.com. That's RAINE medical.com. You can send them an email to info@rainemedical.com or connect with either of them on LinkedIn to request samples and test smarter protection. That's going to do it for this Vendor Spotlight. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Beyond Clean. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to Beyond Clean on your favorite podcast app, or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for Beyond Clean in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@beyondclean.net. We look forward to hearing from you.